All right, welcome back. Over the next few lessons, we are going to be looking at cloud services and iCloud in particular, because we want to make sure that you're setting up iCloud properly in all your devices. And before we look at that, I sort of want to talk about cloud services and what those are in general terms. So when we talk about cloud services, all that really means it's a service that's linked to the internet. So in order to be able to use it and access it, you need a device that's able to connect to the internet. So whether that's a smartphone, your computer through Ethernet or Wi-Fi, you simply just need to be able to get on the internet to use their services. And Apple's been in the internet services for quite some time. So way back in 2000, they started a service called iTools, which was real basic, but it was the first time that they allowed you to store some of your data on what they called iDisk at the time, so on their computers essentially. And then a couple years later, in 2002, they introduced .Mac, which was a paid subscription service, which was the first time you could start synchronizing your contacts, your calendars, and they offered a lot more features with .Mac. Is a great little service. In 2008, when the iPhone 3G came out, they introduced MobileMe. As mobile devices became a lot more important, they added a lot of features specifically for the smartphones. And then in 2011, they finally introduced iCloud, which is what we're using now. And overall, it's a pretty fantastic system, and it's free unless you need a lot more storage space. But what it can do, it's easy to take for granted, but it's pretty magical, really. And so on that topic, when we talk about the cloud, I kind of want to clarify, it's your data is not being stored in the sky somewhere. All that means is that you're giving Apple permission to store your data on computers in one of their data centers. And so that's what it looks like inside of one of these data centers. So it's just vast amounts of computers. They have data centers in California, Oregon, North Carolina, and Nevada currently. And they've just announced a new data center that's going to be built in Iowa for $1.4 billion. It's going to have $600 million worth of computer equipment inside of there. So all your music, your apps, all your contact information is really just being stored remotely in one of these data centers. And that's all that means, really. So the crucial thing is to set up your iCloud correctly with your Apple ID and password. And, the key thing is that your Apple ID is really the most crucial aspect of using iCloud. That's how Apple keeps track of what you've downloaded, your contacts, your calendars, your images, all that stuff. It's all linked to that Apple ID. And after the Apple ID, the other really crucial part is having a really strong and safe password. So, I have my thoughts on this. You want to use something that's not overly long and complicated. You want to be able to use something that's not going to take you ages to type in every time you download something. You want a password that's unique, and that doesn't make any sense, ideally. And, you shouldn't use any information, that password, that can be guessed or found online by somebody. So a spouse name or kids' names or your dog's name and different birth dates are not good info that you should use in a password. And the other crucial factor is that you want to make sure you're using the same Apple ID in all your devices. I work with a lot of clients, and they've picked up different Apple IDs over the years, and that can get super messy. So you want to be careful with that. All right, so I'm going to show you a couple examples of a good and a bad password. And so something like this, like Louise 1987, that's using maybe a family member's name and birthday, is not a good password. There's just a lot of ways people can figure that sort of stuff out nowadays. So that would not be a good password. On the other hand, using a combination of letters and numbers that makes absolutely no sense, but is still short, you're using the 8 digits or 8 characters that Apple wants you to use, a couple capital letters, so you're good. And honestly, these 8 digits would not be that hard for you to memorize. I know it doesn't make any sense, but if you try to memorize it after a couple of days, usually most people can get something like this. So this is really what I recommend, using something that's short and sweet, but makes no sense whatsoever.